Welcome back to the mystifying world of science and science fiction, where today we'll be diving into bizarre photos that just might be proof of one of the most sought-after abilities in history, time travel. Time travel has awed and mystified scientists and science fiction fans for centuries. In pop culture, time travel is seemingly a case of pressing a button or twisting a key. But what if it's much more than that? We have here extraordinary photos that may just be proof that time travel is a real phenomenon that has been happening for years. Our experts have scoured the internet for the most authentic and shocking time travel photos we can find, from famous celebrities caught in other times to ordinary people with extraordinary technology. So strap in and join us for this incredible journey of time travel. Let's dive in and explore time travel, and maybe even find out what the future holds. Greta Thunberg. Greta Thunberg has made a great impact in today's world in her work to combat climate change and environmental issues. Whether you agree with her or not, she has inspired millions of people. Her influence is so great, in fact, that many wonder how she had time to come up with all her ideas and who her influences may be. Well, maybe she's been preparing for decades if this bizarre picture is anything to go by. It's a photo taken in the 19th century that appears to show either her doppelganger or her in the past doing some time travel. The picture seems identical to her modern-era photos, down to the braid. Whoever this was seemingly matches perfectly with her in looks and stature, and this is just too strange to be a mere coincidence. Is it possible Greta Thunberg is working to prevent climate change before it ever happened by going back in time? While it sounds silly, this old picture just might prove time travel is real. After all, what other explanation is there? Phone photo. It's one of the most infamous pieces of time travel evidence, and for good reason. This photo, taken in 1962, shows a celebration where reporters and cameramen abound, all trying to take pictures of the champion and his trophy. Normal, right? There's nothing out of the ordinary until you notice the one person in the picture who stands out, the one with the phone in their hand. Yes, despite it being 1962, someone in the photo is holding a phone in their hand. What's perhaps even more interesting is that the phone looks almost identical to some sort of modern-era flip phone, making it all the more suspicious. There weren't any cell phones available in 1962, and even if there were, it most definitely would not have looked like a modern one. Was this someone from the future, using a phone that hadn't been invented yet? Was this a sign of time travelers on site, attempting to capture an amazing moment in history? While there have been a plethora of efforts to debunk this photo, it's still one of the most compelling pieces of evidence that time travel may indeed be possible. Whoever this time traveler was, he slipped up when he decided to pull out his phone. Talk about getting caught in 4K. Charlie Chaplin. With Charlie Chaplin dying just a few years after cell phones were invented, it's easy to see why anything caught in his films that appears out of the ordinary can make us wonder if time travel was involved. In one of his films, a lady is seen walking along the street for a brief scene. What some keen-eyed viewers found, however, was that she appears to be holding and talking on a cell phone. It's easy to recognize the fact that she's holding her hand to her ear, talking as she walks. Suddenly, however, she stops in the middle of the screen and turns slightly, and the phone itself can be seen. Though it's hard to make out due to the old nature of the footage, this just makes it all the more compelling. This movie has been seen hundreds of thousands of times, and each copy seems to show the same phone being held. Was someone from the future hanging out in the black and white silent movie era? Or was it a case of time travel gone wrong? Many theorists have concluded that it may very well have been an accidental case of time travel, as there seems to be no clear explanation as to how she'd be talking on a cell phone without any cell service. Hipster in time. Phone photos aren't the only pieces of evidence people have found of potential time travelers. This photograph, taken in British Columbia in 1941, shows a rather modern figure standing in the crowd. While most of the other people are wearing hats and smart jackets, this man is wearing sunglasses and other modern clothing. Seeing someone like this at the time isn't just some strong fashion sense either. In 1941, sunglasses were incredibly rare. This time-traveling hipster stands out in the photo clearly, and it's impossible to deny the similarities between the clothing clothing he's wearing, and modern-day attire. Is it possible he was actually someone from the future? He certainly stands out from all the other people in the picture, and his clothing is so different that many believe that's the only conclusion. Some fact-checking websites have pointed out that it's possible he's wearing relevant clothing for the area in 1941, but it's still a fun thought to consider, especially because of how different he looks when you compare him to everyone else in the image. Everyone seems to be wearing clothes relevant to the era, and then there's this man in the back, looking so out of place. Was he a time traveler who got caught in a photograph? We may never know. Phoning home. In Cornwall, England, a bizarre and mysterious photograph has sparked intense speculation throughout the internet. Taken in 1943, the photograph shows a group of people enjoying a day at the beach. There appears to be nothing out of the ordinary in the photograph, until closer inspection reveals a man out of place. He stands alone in the back of the frame, wearing a brown suit and looking like he's holding a phone in his hands. Everyone else is wearing beach attire and suntanning, and here is this man, dressed in a suit with what looks like something like a phone in his ear. This photograph has been analyzed and examined by many people, and while some suggest the man was simply rolling a cigarette or something like that, the fact that he's in a suit and seems to be checking his phone makes it a bit too coincidental. He stands out, almost as if he suddenly appeared there, or didn't realize that people wore different outfits to the beach. This guy clearly didn't get the memo, so maybe now he's checking his phone for some directions on how to get back home. Ancient astronaut. When tourists noticed an astronaut carved onto the side of the Cathedral of Salamanca in Spain, many were convinced that this was proof of ancient astronauts having visited Earth. The relief sculpture had the features of a man in a spacesuit, complete with boots and a helmet, and the construction of the cathedral went as far back as 1513. There were calls of alien influence, with some saying that an alien species had visited the medieval era and had molded their tech into human-like forms. Although this is an exciting notion, the truth is that this is actually a modern addition to the artwork that was carried out by Geronimo Garcia de Quinones in 1992 during the cathedral's renovations. The astronaut wasn't carved by aliens or time travelers, but by a modern-day artist in the late 20th century. It's a fascinating example of how a modern addition has been interpreted as ancient history, and just goes to show the power of the human imagination. Despite this, some theorists believe this is just the explanation to keep people from looking into the past, and who knows what secrets remain hidden away within the walls of this temple. Jimmy Fallon. For some reason, celebs have been the source of many conspiracy theories for as long as we can remember. One of the most bizarre and compelling theories surrounds late-night talk show host Jimmy Fallon. Many observers have noticed how similar he looks to the late Marxist-Leninist revolutionary leader Mahir Khayan, who was born in 1946 and died in 1972. Is it simply a coincidence? Or is Jimmy Fallon living a double life as a revolutionary communist? Most likely neither. But it is an interesting thought that people have been pondering for years. One conclusion that many people seem to believe is that Jimmy Fallon could very well be a time traveler, setting up shop in the future after living his life in the past. It's an interesting thought, but the proof of his time-traveling activities remains to be seen. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was one of the most fascinating and controversial celebrities back when she was in her prime. Everyone, from her most passionate haters to her most loyal fans, had opinions about the world-famous actress, and her mysterious death has only added to her legend. Enter this iconic photograph from back in 1955, which shows a fan attempting to take a photo of the star without her knowing. What's striking about the photo is the fan's odd choice of camera, a camera that looks like it belongs in the 21st century and looks identical to a modern-day smartphone. It's a curious case of what appears to be time travel and has baffled many people ever since it was first discovered. However, some have suggested that the woman isn't actually taking a photo of Marilyn Monroe, but rather holding a mirror that just so happens to look like a phone. How many coincidences have to line up before we consider the possibility that time travel is real and that Marilyn Monroe was visited by one of her future admirers? After all, who wouldn't want to snap a pic of their favorite celebrity for a personal collection or get a photo signed before they ever became famous? Only time will tell whether this photo is a hoax or proof of time travel. The Messenger. It's a photo with one of those classic names that reveal how dated it actually is. Young woman with a letter and a messenger in an interior was painted in 1670 and then further documented in 1908, 2 dates before cell phones, computers, and the internet were even a thought in our minds. But when you look more closely at the painting, there is a peculiar figure that should give some pause. Zooming in, the woman on the far right of the image can be seen holding a small rectangular device that looks almost perfectly like a modern smartphone. Could she just be holding a bizarre shaped letter that looks like a phone? Or is this proof of time travel? The artist himself, Peter de Hooch, was a prolific painter during his life, but never once seemed to paint another picture that could have been proof of time travel. Could it have just been a happy coincidence that led him to capture this moment in time? We may never know, but for now, it's worth keeping an open mind about the possibilities that time travel could bring us. Adidas. When a mummy was unearthed from the ground a few years back, scientists didn't know what to think. The woman, who was confirmed to be over 1,000 years old, was surprisingly wearing a pair of what seemed to be Adidas sneakers. How in the world could someone from so long ago have access to a modern pair of shoes like that? The answer, of course, will likely never be known, but many consider it to be solid evidence that time travel is real, although further evidence showed that the woman was a Turkish seamstress, which could explain why her shoes were so advanced. Who knows if someone from the future visited her and gave her the shoes out of kindness? And if so, could they have visited other people as well? Even if she was a talented seamstress, it's hard to imagine her making shoes that look like they came from the future. Another possibility that many theorists have come up with is the fact that she could have created the shoes herself, but was inspired by the shoes she saw someone else wearing, perhaps the shoes of a time traveler from the distant future. This could explain both why she was a seamstress and the advanced style of her shoes. Regardless, this piece of history provides an intriguing insight into the possibility of time travel. Time surfer. Out-of-place photos of bizarre individuals who just shouldn't be where they are. That's the bread and butter of images that prove time travel, and this one, from over 100 years ago, is no exception. It features a group of well-dressed Canadians having a picnic on the side of a hill, but there's a strange figure in the center. He's wearing a t-shirt and shorts with ruffled hair, and many people have taken to calling him the time surfer, owing to his out-of-place clothing. Some have also pointed out the woman on the right, who appears to be pointing and possibly gesturing in his direction, but given that he's wearing such an unusual outfit, and that the photo was taken well before this type of attire was commonplace, it makes sense she'd be shocked by his outfit. It just begs the question, why in the world would he travel back through time dressed like this? Is this really proof of a time traveler, or just another clever hoax? The image itself appears to be authentic, so unless this is some elaborate fabrication, maybe this is the real deal after all. Back to the bricks. If you've ever watched Back to the Future, you know that you have to get it just right if you want to leap through a time portal and reach your destination. But according to police in Pensacola, Florida, it looks like this driver didn't quite get it right. Police responded to a call about a car that crashed into a building just before 8:30 a.m. on Sunday. When they reached the scene, they found a 40-year-old man had crashed his Dodge Challenger through the brick wall. Amazingly, the driver was wearing a seatbelt and uninjured, though he was telling officers that he was trying to enter a time portal. Thankfully, the building was empty at the time and no other injuries were reported. It's unclear whether the driver think he was trying to return to the past or whether he was chasing a vision of the future. But this story is certainly an interesting look into the power of pop culture. It's also possible, though probably unlikely, that the man actually was a time traveler who simply misjudged the power of his car and misjudged the distance. Either way, it's an amusing story to leave us with. Time travel is dangerous, and never try to one-up Marty McFly. Grave Niskos. One bizarre artwork, fittingly titled Grave Niskos of an Enthroned Woman with an Attendant, has confused scientists and even museums, none of which can figure out exactly what is going on in the art. It's dated to 100 BC, making this one of the most ancient possible cases of time travel that we've encountered. Even more shocking is that the artwork itself appears to show USB ports on the side of a laptop the little girl is holding up to the woman. It's obviously highly improbable that ancient Greek people had any knowledge of future tech like USB ports, which makes us question just what is going on in the artwork. The owner of the artwork, the Getty Villa in Los Angeles, even admits that the container is too shallow to hold anything and suggests it may be a jewelry box. However, what if that's all wrong? What if the artist planned to draw a laptop and just used an ancient Greek version of it? It's truly a remarkable thought. If the case is accurate, it'll make us rethink everything we know about the past. There's no mistaking this image. It looks like a laptop, and it seemingly suggests that time travel has indeed been happening for centuries. Sputnik of Montalcino. It's a painting that has shocked people for generations. Whether you're an art history buff or just interested in the strange, the painting known by time travel theorists as the Sputnik of Montalcino is one of the most interesting pieces of artwork modern man has seen. Ventura Salimbeni painted this piece titled Glorification of the Eucharist in the Church of St. Peter in Montalcino, Siena, Italy in the late 16th century. And yet the focus of the painting is an eerily familiar piece of technology. At the center of the painting, held by Jesus and God, is an object that bears an uncanny resemblance to the first artificial satellite launched by the Soviets in 1957, Sputnik. It's even about the right size, almost 2 feet in diameter. Could it be that the painter was somehow able to time travel to the future and see a preview of a technological breakthrough? Or maybe the artist was just a master of his craft and a master of illusion. We may never know the answer, but it doesn't take away from the mystery of this image. The expected one. A young man sits in waiting for the girl he loves to walk along the path. He holds a flower, eagerly waiting, but she's busy with something else. And from the image, it looks like she's busy looking at a smartphone. This painting, created by Ferdinand George Waldmüller and titled The Expected One, is still hanging at the neoclassical Neue Pinakothek Museum in Munich, Germany. The painting is thought to have been created in either 1850 or 1860, over a century before cell phones came around. The way we think of millennials nowadays, this could seem like an ominous warning of what's to come, or just a happy coincidence. But the painting is proof that there is something strange about this image, and that it deserves more consideration than it has received. Could this be a coincidence, an artist's prowess, or a glimpse into the future of technology? It's possible this young woman was texting some future version of a suitor in order to elude the eager man in the painting.